we're going to see now the site of Khir Bet Kayafa. The site is known in the literature already 160 years. The French traveler Victor Guérin, one of the first people who came to the land, to the Holy Land, and did archaeological surveys and documented the archaeological site, was this French guy, Victor Guérin, and he already mentioned Khir Bet Kayafa. But look, 160 years, nobody thought that the site is important. Nobody went to excavate, nobody did anything with it. And why? I don't know. I mean, I came to the site and immediately understood that it's a very important place. But apparently many other archaeologists who visited the place somehow neglected it. I think it's probably, when you come there, you'll see beautiful walls standing, and people thought, well, all this probably late Islamic. Nobody believed it's much earlier than that. And this was the mistake. But in 2007 we came, and just for 2 weeks with a few people, we made few excavation trenches to see what's going on. And it turned out that indeed we have an Iron Age city. The city was standing for 2 meters, and we have a nice destruction layer because on the floors we have complete restorable vessels. So it's look good and interesting, and we decided to have a large project. 2008 we already came for 6 weeks with 30 people. Later we excavated with 50 people and 60 and 90. Now in the last season we are 90 people every season. More and more people joining us from year to year. So 2008, the first season, we excavate and we discovered inscription. Wonderful, the Kayafa inscription. And then we discovered olive pits, and we dated the city. And the big surprise was that it's from the time of King David. And at that moment we have a full page in the New York Times. Now, why King David and Khir Bet Kayafa are so important? You need to see the history of research. Till the beginning of the 1980s, scholars accepted the biblical tradition as representing accurate historical memories. So people didn't question if it's written that Solomon built Chatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Scholars believe that Solomon indeed built Chatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Okay, this is Arabic, fencing, or something which is 100 years, 200 years. Nobody will think that this is much earlier. But what do you need to look? What do you need to see? You need to look a bit further down. What do you see here? You see a huge stone. This is not something that the Arabic village will construct with. And then over there another huge stone. And if you really go around and looking at the bottom, and of course now the vegetation is not high. You need also to think about a surveyor who come here in winter. The vegetation is high, so you don't see much. It's also a matter of luck. When do you visit the site exactly? But there is a guy called Sar Galor, which is my student and also my partner here. He was the first one who noticed that this is an important site. And he invited me one day to visit Khir Bet Kayafa. And after this visit, we started to discuss the possibility of doing some excavations. And then in 2007, we came and did the first season. What you can see here, you see the road, you climb up with this road, or maybe I'll stand a bit higher here. So
it's trying to get away from us. Sort of
bundle up.
But by the way, all these illustrations appearing in our website, so you can really download and see them. But you see, this is the dirt road that we came here, and we are standing here. We are not in the city yet, we are very close to the city. And you look wonderful aerial photograph. You see a circle with the city wall. Without excavation, you can see the entire city wall. And we know that this is about 700 meters, and the area inside is 2.3 hectares. This is not very big. Megiddo is 6 hectares, Lachish is 7.5, Tel Safi is 40. Chatzor, big Chatzor of the late bronze was 80 hectares. This is only 2.3. So this is one thing, okay? So this is a rather small site. The other thing is that it's not a tail site. When you go inside, on large part you see the bedrock. A tail site is when you have many layers, one on top of the other. When we were on Azekah, we were standing on a lower part, which is probably the original topography. But behind us, you saw a hill. That hill is artificial accumulation of layers.
Oh, okay.
When the first people came to Azekah, the whole area was probably the same layer as we were standing on. But when they built fortification in the early bronze and middle bronze and late bronze and Iron Age and Roman and so on and so forth, it became 10 meters higher than the original level. But
Just
not in
to
Khirbet.
orient you, it's right there.
Yeah, that
The
was,
hill
I did
over there
figure.
is Khirbet Kayafa.
Good.
We are in Khirbet Kayafa, the hill over there is Azeka.
Yeah, I did figure.
So this is the situation before we came, more or less, and here you can see the site in the end of the previous season. Okay, look at the previous season. We already excavated in few areas over here and over here, and altogether we are excavating by now about 20% of the site,
Wow.
which give us a large horizontal exposure. And what can we say about the site of Khirbet Kayafa? Okay, so you can see here, it's not the update with the last season yet, because we don't finish to work on the new results, but you can see the city wall over here. And look at what type of city wall. You see an outer wall, and after 2 meters an inner wall. And in between you see rooms. This is what we call casemate city wall. Casemate. If you think about the story of Rahab in Jericho, what the biblical tradition says, that she lived in the wall, and in the city wall she dwelled. How one can live inside the city wall if the city wall is a solid wall? You cannot. So the biblical tradition describing a situation like here, where you have a casemate city wall. You see one gate here and this other gate here. We are, by the way, here between the two gates. There's also a possibility to go into the gate, but it's a bit complicated, so we look at it from above. But anyhow, what you can see here is that we have two gates, we have a city wall encircling the site, we have a belt of houses relating into the casement. We'll see it inside as well. So it's wonderful, typical today in urban planning. And then another nice thing, after you enter the gate, what do you see here? An open area. So you have a piazza. And the gate was a very important area in biblical city, where people, the judges were sitting, or the king sit in the gate, the market is in the gate, and even cultic activities and judges are done in the gate. And it's interesting that in Khirbet Kayafa we discovered 3 cultic rooms. We discovered altogether about 60 rooms, and in 3 of them we have evidence for cultic activities. One was found over here inside a private house, but one was found here in this room just adjacent to the piazza, and another one was found here again adjacent to a piazza. And why it's important, and with this I will stop and we'll go into the site itself, because we need to, today when you think about a cultic place, it's a worship where the community gathered together, like a church or a synagogue or a mosque. But in antiquity it was not like this. When you have a temple, people did not go into the temple. The temple is the house of God. So it's Holy of Holies. People and God cannot live together in the same building. So as a matter of fact, all the ancient temples were not open to the public. Only the high priest or the king or few people can go inside to clean and to feed the god and to do some cultic activities. But what happened to the community? When all the community gathered, when you have pilgrimage to temples, where are all these thousands of people? They are not in the building. Where are they? They are in the courtyard around it or in the open piazza. So this is the place where all the community gathers, and here they can sacrifice animals, and they can do cooking and eating, they can do dancing, praying. All the cultic activities of the community is done in the open area. But you know that God is on the other side of the wall. And also it's possible that there were windows and people can look through the windows inside the building, and they will see the statue of God, the face of the statue. And what is the Hebrew, the biblical terms for pilgrimage? To see the face of God. What does it mean to see the face of God? People came into the temple, they opened the windows or the doors, they gave a quick look inside, and they saw the face of the statue. This was the term for pilgrimage. A metaphor, but not just a metaphor, a real action. They go and saw the face of God. Okay, so now you see the city, you have a general idea about what's going on, and we'll talk about the details inside.
Website.
The wall, was this in this
Like this,
condition when you found it?
yes, it got even better. We destroyed, each time a lorry, a big tractor goes, he removes a stone or two. When
So
it just
it
came, it
was-
was only 4 meters, now it became 6 meters.
So it wasn't collapsed.
No, on the
was
contrary,
it was-
it's
it was
standing
like-
like this, and people look at this stone, they didn't think it's much going on, but look below, you see huge stone below?
Yeah.
Once you realize that there are big stone below, the later small wall with small stone, built on huge stones, the question is what are the huge stones?
Yeah.
And this was overlooked, 160 years nobody knew.
It's remarkable that it's been standing like that, with no cement between the stones.
Okay, we'll start the explanation from the area over there.
and all these walls were standing when you found it?
As is, yeah.
As is.
Nobody saw that because this was the level of the ground where we are standing. Okay, so you see we are standing on the unexcavated area. This is how the site looked like before any archaeological activity was done, okay? And the only thing that was really penetrated below is this peripheral wall. The circle walls that you can see here so nicely in the aerial photograph. And everybody believed that it was very late, and people didn't notice that there are huge stones below it. This was the big mistake of all the people who surveyed the site. They only saw the upper stone and didn't see the bottom, okay? And when we are starting to excavate, we are starting like this. We're marking square 5 by 5 meter, and we start going down. And after 1 meter or half a meter or 10 centimeters, we're starting to have stones. Everything that you see here was found like this. The only place where we did some reconstruction is in the gate area. And you will see a cement line. Everything below the cement line was found in situ, and 1 or 2 stones above it were reconstructed. And later I can explain you about it. So look here, you see a beautiful preservation, almost 4 meters. This is one of the best preservation of city walls from the biblical time. If you go to Megiddo, Chatzor, all other sites, you will not find city walls standing for 4 meters. So there is excellent preservation. And you see the outer wall and the inner wall. And on the outer wall, you see the upper stones, the smaller stones are later. And the big stone where you have the real Iron Age material. So this is the city wall, and you see how the houses of the building are abutting the city wall. The city wall is not freestanding, but you have houses. When people came here in antiquity, they couldn't stand where we are standing because there was another building here. So people will stand in the upper part of the city and they will see the houses. We are lucky because it was excavated and destroyed. We can see the city wall from above. But it was not possible to anybody when the city was here really to see the city wall like this. Now, what is the trick here? You know, usually people build solid walls, which will be 4, 5, 6, 10 meters. But when it's a solid wall, you need the construction material for the entire wall. If you do it casemate like here, you need stone from outside and inside, but in the middle it's left empty. So you need less building material, so it's cheaper and also faster. You can build it much faster and cheaper than a solid wall. And another advantage that you also have area to be used. When you have a walled city, every square meter inside is very valuable because it's protected area. But if the city wall is empty, hollowed, you have more space to be used. So also the space is valuable. You can use it for the soldiers, and you can use it for dwelling, or you can use it for storage, or whatever is needed.
But the wall is weaker.
It's weaker in a way, exactly.
Weaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
But think about if some enemy came and he want to conquer the city. How do you conquer cities in antiquity?
Break through the wall.
So there are different possibilities. One of them is to come with ladders and to climb above the wall. And the other possibility is to dig tunnels under the wall and to go inside the city from below. And another technique is to come with a battering ram and to crush the wall. And when it's hollow like this, if people try to crush the wall here, what the people inside the city can do quickly? They can quickly fill the casemate. You don't need that the whole 700 meters will be solid. You can just quickly solid at a specific point along the city wall. So that's also a possibility. But what is the real trick? Why should anybody try to break a wall? What is much easier to break?
The water.
The door.
The door, yeah.
The door, when you have a gate, what is the door? 20 centimeter door. So the gate is the weakest point of every city. And that's why it's built with a huge fortification. It's not that the door, you have a whole construction, which is the gate, the building of the gatehouse. And usually we know that it was also much higher than the other part of the city wall. We see it in Egyptian and Assyrian reliefs. When they're conquering cities, you see that the city wall is a certain, you can see a person, then the city wall is maybe 4 times higher, and then the gate itself is 5 times higher. So they were also higher than the city wall. So they can shoot for a distance, and it will be harder to target. But of course, what is a 20 centimeter door? You can just knock it. You can take it out of the hinge. You can burn it. It's wood. You know, it's much easier to destroy the doors than to start conquering the city. And that's why all the cities has only one gate, because you prefer to have only one weak point than two weak points in your fortifications. And that's a big question, why Bet Kayaffa has two gates. And I'm saying maybe because it's the first city, it was a mistake and they never repeated it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the seat, this is the bedrock. You see the rock down here? This is bedrock. So the site was built on bedrock. It was here for maybe 20, 30 years, not more than one generation, then it was destroyed and people didn't come back here. This is the this is the sad part of Bet Kayaffa, that it was suddenly destroyed. I'm sure that in the time of David it was a huge tragedy, of course, but for us as archaeologists it's a gold mine. We have a whole city like this, it was suddenly destroyed. So every room that you see here, we have dozens and dozens of restorable pottery vessels. We have a lot of weapons made of iron and bronze. We have art objects, we have animal bones, and even inscriptions. Seals, scarabs, Egyptian scarabs. We have stone vessels. The site is very rich because it was suddenly abandoned. So suddenly destroyed, and everything was destroyed and buried in situ.
Now, sometimes when cities were destroyed, there's evidence of burning.
I know.
But why, on what basis? Maybe it was just abandoned. How do you know it was actually destroyed?
The question is what's happening in Bet Kayaffa, because when you have a real violent destruction, you'll find everything collapse. You find all the vessels and everything in situ. You find a fire, evidence of fire, and even skeleton of people. People were killed and nobody buried them, so they were left trapped, you know, in the ruined city. This is the case of Gat, Philistine Gat, where Aaron Meir is excavating. They have skeletons in the fired city. Okay, so it's really a very, very vicious destruction. In Bet Kayaffa, what we have is everything has been collapsed. We have hundreds of pottery vessels smashed on the floors. We have a lot of weapons, iron artifact and bronze artifact. Now, if this place was abounded peacefully, people will take the valuables. When the site is left, you don't find hundreds and thousands of artifacts, especially not bronze and iron, which was very valuable those days. So it was suddenly abandoned. The question is, what's happened exactly? I don't know. I can imagine a situation that the people were here and one day they saw a huge Philistine army of a few thousand people. They were scared. Everybody took his kids and ran away. They took the gold or a donkey or whatever, but they couldn't take all the pottery vessels and all the vessels and everything. The Philistines came and there was an empty city. What do you do with an empty city? You can fire it, but why? You'll gain nothing for it. So they just dismantled. You know that in antiquity timber was very expensive. And the Philistines in the coastal plains, they don't have forest. While here in the hill country, you have much more forest. So it's possible that they came, they lived only 12 kilometers, this is 8 miles, 3 hours walk. So they can come with wagons and the oxen, you know, and they just dismantled all the wood and took all the valuable things. And what we as archaeologists finding, you know, all the pottery vessels, they are broken, you cannot take them. What surprised me is that we have more than 30 weapons of bronze and iron. And these, I'm sure that the Philistines will loot them. And also the people who run away will take them with them. So how come we have what we have? Probably it's only 1% of what was here originally. Maybe there was 3,000 weapons, and these took some, these took some, but it's possible when a wall collapse or a floor collapse or, you know, you have this chaos of war. So 1% of the weapons somehow, you know, was hiding some under furniture or